So imagine for a second that you're back in school.
Oh boy.
Right. It's like 11 p.m., the library is closing, and you are working on that dreaded group project.
I know exactly the one you mean.
Yeah, half the team is arguing about the font size for the title slide. The visionary of the group is just completely nowhere to be found, and the deadline is looming like an actual physical storm cloud over the table.
And everyone is just completely stressed out.
Exactly. But then you look over to the corner of the table, and there's that one person. They aren't shouting, they aren't panicking, they're quietly fixing the citations.
Right.
They are literally the only thing keeping the roof from collapsing on everyone.
It's such a classic scene. And the thing is, they aren't looking for credit either. But if they stood up and walked away, the whole structure would fall apart in seconds.
And absolute seconds.
Yeah.
And that is the vibe and really the very specific personality architecture that we are exploring today.
I'm really looking forward to this one.
Me too. We are jumping back into the world of the Max Energy ME80 personality system. And specifically, we are looking at a profile that I think is the unsung hero and maybe the tragic hero of the modern world. We are talking about the SWOU, also known as the Resigned Carrier.
Yeah, Resigned Carrier is such a heavy, evocative name, and I'm really glad we're digging into this today because this is the personality type that usually gets overlooked, precisely because they are so incredibly effective at what they do.
So our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack this. We want to understand the person who sees that the game is rigged, sees that resources are short, and yet chooses to carry the responsibility anyway. We're basing all of this on the 10.1 SWOU Resigned Carrier Assessment Report from Max Energy.
It's a fascinating profile. It really challenges how we usually think about strength. You know, you tend to think of strength as being loud or aggressive or dominant. But the SWOU shows us a completely different kind of strength that is all about endurance, absorption, and stabilization.
Before we get into the real nuts and bolts of the SWOU, let's zoom out for just a second. We've touched on it before, but for someone tuning in for the first time, what exactly is the Max Energy ME80 system? Like, how should you visualize this framework?
Think of the ME80 system as a wiring diagram for human energy.
A wiring diagram.
Exactly. It doesn't just slap a sticker on you that says introvert or extrovert.
Mm-hmm.
It explains the actual mechanics of the engine under the hood. It looks at your flow of energy. So what you value internally, how your emotions actually trigger, how you calculate your decisions, and then finally how you act in the world. It's essentially a flowchart of your soul.
A flowchart of the soul. I love that. So today we are tracing the specific circuit of the SWOU, and I have to start with that name again, Resigned Carrier. To me, resigned sounds a bit, I don't know, sad, like they've just given up. Is that the vibe here? Is it about defeat?
That is the absolute most common misconception. In the system, resigned doesn't mean giving up on life at all. It refers to a very specific kind of acceptance, a passive-bearing nature.
Passive bearing.
Right. Think of a load-bearing wall in a house. It is passive. It doesn't move around. It doesn't attack anyone. But it is resigned to hold the weight of the entire second floor. If it decides to stop bearing and just walks away, the house collapses.
Oh, wow. Okay, that changes the perspective completely. So it's not about weakness. It's about being structural.
Exactly. The report defines their identity very clearly. They are deliberate stabilizers. And their core declaration, the motto that basically drives their existence, is really profound. It says, carries burdens to preserve connection, turning unfairness into a chance to mend.
Turning unfairness into a chance to mend. That really implies they know things are unfair, like they aren't naive about the world.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah.
The SWOU is actually incredibly realistic. They do not wear rose-colored glasses. They walk into a company or, say, a family Thanksgiving dinner, and they immediately see all the cracks. They know the boss is incompetent. They know the budget is impossible. They know the reality just isn't ideal. But here's the key. Their internal bottom line is things can be imperfect, but they cannot be allowed to completely lose control.
So they aren't trying to build utopia. They're just trying to prevent the apocalypse.
Precisely. They use their endurance to keep the system operating and forbearance to keep relationships from snapping. They are the glue.
But this brings me to a massive question. If I see a system is broken, if I'm that student doing all the work at midnight, my instinct is to flip the table or just quit. How do they control that impulse? What is their control mechanism?
The report describes their control philosophy as having a global view.
A global view.
Yeah, because they see the whole picture. They realize that flipping the table hurts absolutely everyone. If they quit, The project fails, the team gets fired, the family suffers. So instead of trying to fix every tiny little crack, which they know is impossible, they focus entirely on preventing the building from falling down.
It's triage.
It's the ultimate maintenance of the foundation. They quietly fill the gaps. If there's chaos externally, they just absorb it so the system keeps running. It's really a philosophy of minimum viable stability.
Okay, I really want to understand how they do this. Let's pop the hood and look at that engine you mentioned. In the ME80 system, we have the energy matrix, the IP, IQ, EQ. What is the general characteristic of this SWAU energy before we break it down layer by layer?
It has an extremely strong inward gathering characteristic. Just visualize a really heavy flywheel or maybe even a black hole.
A black hole.
Yeah, because most people, when they encounter conflict or unfairness, they project it outward. They yell, they push back, they complain. This SWAU takes that external conflict, absorbs it inward, and converts it.
Converts it into what?
Into stability. It's exactly like a shock absorber on a car. It takes the violence of the pothole and converts it into heat and pressure internally so the passengers in the car don't feel the bump.
That sounds incredibly useful, but also incredibly exhausting. Let's break down these layers, starting with the deepest layer, the IP or inner value layer. This is what matters to them, right? What drives a resigned carrier.
Right. The report defines their IP as stable accumulation activation.
Stable accumulation. That almost sounds like hoarding. What are they accumulating?
They are accumulating okayness. They aren't trying to accumulate fame or excitement or money. Their deep sense of worth comes from stockpiling stability. They want to be the anchor. When the storm hits, they derive their core value from being the one thing that does not move.
So if you ask them what they want out of life, they wouldn't say a roller coaster. They'd say solid ground.
Exactly. Now, if we move up a layer to the IQ, the emotional activation layer, this is how their feelings trigger. For these WAUU, this is defined as risk and consequence judgment.
Wait, their emotions are risk assessments? That sounds almost robotic.
It sounds robotic on paper, but it's actually a hyper-fast survival calculation. Imagine a boss comes in and yells at them over a missed deadline. A reactive person might feel anger and yell back instantly. This WAU feels the anger too, but their emotional layer immediately filters it through a calculation. What are the consequences if I react? What is the risk to the team if I fight back right now?
So they aren't numb. They are just instantly calculating the cost of the emotion.
Correct. They aren't reacting blindly. They are calculating the cost of not holding it together. They realize the price of an emotional outburst is just way too high for the system to bear.
That is just incredibly disciplined. But how do they actually make decisions then? That's the EQ layer, right?
Yes, the decision calculation layer. And for the CBBU, this is emotional detachment and understanding.
Emotional detachment. Again, that sounds a little cold.
Think of it like a surgeon. A surgeon cannot be crying over the patient while they're operating. They have to detach to function. The CBABU looks at the messy situation, understands why it's happening, like they get why the client is angry, they get why the system failed, but they remove their own ego from the equation so they can just keep functioning.
So let's recap the wiring here. The IP wants stability. The IQ assesses the risk of losing that stability. The EQ detaches emotionally to protect the stability. And finally, the manifestation layer. What do we actually see on the outside?
The manifestation is energy operates inward, carrying, absorbing, integrating. You won't see them exploding. You won't see big dramatic gestures. What you see is, well, nothing falling apart. You see the absolute absence of disaster.
Which is exactly why they are invisible. If the shock absorber works perfectly, you don't even notice the road was bumpy.
Exactly. And this leads us to a really deep analysis of their inner traits. The core point here is a fundamental belief they hold. No matter how messy things get, someone must hold it.
Why them, though? Why do they feel like they have to be the ones? Why not just let someone else catch the falling plates for once?
It really comes down to a high sensitivity to the consequences of chaos. They look around the room and they think, if I don't hold this, who will? They are extreme pragmatists. They see that resources are scarce. They see the rules are shaky. So instead of walking away in protest, they choose to stay behind.
Staying behind? That really resonates. It's like the designated driver of life. Everyone else is having a wild time or completely falling apart, and the CWAU is just there ensuring everyone gets home alive.
Yes, that's a perfect analogy. They view holding as their primary goal. They aren't trying to create a utopia. They are maintaining minimum viable standards. It's about the survival of the whole unit.
And there has to be but here, you can't just absorb shock forever without wear and tear. If you keep stuffing things inward, eventually the container gets full. What are the blind spots? What is the shadow side of this?
The shadow is heavy. The report calls it grievance internalized.
Grievance internalized. That sounds like a ticking time bomb.
It is. The core warning in the report is incredibly vivid. It says, one yielding after another slowly crushes yourself flat.
Crushes yourself flat. That is a terrifying image. It's like a track compactor.
Because they don't point out unfairness directly. Remember, they absorb it to keep the peace. They suppress the emotion. But energy doesn't just disappear. That compressed anger has to get processed eventually. And it transforms into deep fatigue. It becomes numbness.
So it's not an explosion, it's an implosion.
Usually, yes. Their expectations lower. Their inner baseline becomes very pessimistic. They start to feel like, well, life is just suffering and I just have to bear it. Their momentum drains completely away. They stop trying to fix the world and they just try to survive it.
It sounds like burnout, but a very specific kind of burnout, like a burnout of the soul.
It is. It's the fatigue of the yes man who is secretly screaming no inside.
This has to spill over into their social relationships. How does a resigned carrier act with their friends?
The report calls their social dynamic low voice cleanup.
Low voice cleanup.
Think about the person cleaning up the bottles after the house party while everyone else is passing out on the couch. But there is a huge paradox here. The report notes complaints on the lips, but hands never let go.
Oh, I know this person. They are grumbling, saying, I can't believe I have to do this again, but they are literally doing the dishes while they say it.
Exactly. They signal their unhappiness, but they never actually stop working. And this is dangerous because friends and colleagues just see them as easygoing and accommodating. Because they're so outwardly reliable, people just pile more responsibility on them. They say, oh, just give it to Sarah. She handles everything.
And meanwhile, Sarah is secretly drowning.
But no one notices she is holding on so hard until she suddenly erupts or just collapses from total overload. The hidden cost is immense because they make it look entirely too easy.
Let's pivot to the workplace because despite the real risk of burnout, I feel like every single company needs a SWAU, even if they don't realize it. What is their real business value?
Their core advantage is called system foundation ability.
System foundation. They are the concrete slab the office is built on.
They shine in environments that are resource scarce or where communication is completely failing. When everything is on fire, the SWAU is the one stepping in and stopping the losses. They pull the chaos back into a controllable range.
They are the fixers.
They are the reconstruction crew. They are highly sensitive to details and processes. So after a disaster after a huge project fails or a major client leaves, the SWAU is the key figure in the debriefing room. They know exactly what broke and how to patch it so it actually holds the next time.
So if you're listening to this and you resonate with this profile, or maybe you're a manager hiring right now, what are the recommended career fields for a resigned carrier? Where do they really thrive?
The report suggests fields like risk control and cleanup, basically identifying crises before they happen.
Like a compliance officer or maybe a safety inspector.
Absolutely. Also, project firefighting, taking over high-pressure, disordered, messy situations and restoring order to them.
That sounds so stressful, but for them, it's probably where they feel the most useful.
It fits their energy matrix perfectly. Also, internal coordination, fixing organizational gaps, and generally, high responsibility, low exposure roles.
Backstage support.
Yes. Positions requiring extreme resolve, but not necessarily the spotlight. They don't need the applause. They just need to know the show went on because they were there.
This has been such a massive eye-opener. I think it's so easy to overlook the quiet people in the room, but this report makes it so clear that they are the ones doing all the heavy lifting.
They really are. The SWAU Resigned carrier isn't the person in the spotlight, but they are the essential foundation preventing the entire system from collapsing.
So if you are a SWAU, or if you know one, what is the ultimate takeaway here? We obviously don't want them to get crushed flat.
I'll leave you with this final thought. It's a gold sentence straight from the report. When bearing is understood and boundaries established, this quiet carrying transforms from consumption into truly valuable stability force.
From consumption into stability force. That is beautiful. It's really about boundaries. You can carry the world, but you have to know where to set it down sometimes.
Exactly. Don't be the fuel that gets burned up. Be the structure that holds it together.
Thank you so much for breaking this down with me. It's such a complex profile, but I feel like I understand the actual mechanics of holding it together so much better now.
It's a rich system. There's always more to uncover.
And as a reminder to you listening, today's deep dive was based entirely on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report, specifically the section on the SWAU Resigned carrier.
And if this resonated with you, There is a lot more to explore in that system.
Definitely. If you want to understand your own wiring or learn more about the other profiles, you can visit their official website at www.maxenergylife.com, or you can search for Max Energy or Met Energy on Facebook. There's a whole world of energy psychology out there to explore. But I want to leave you with one final thought that builds on what we've talked about today.
Let's hear it.
What if the absolute best thing we can do for the resigned carrier in our lives isn't just to help them carry the load, but to occasionally let the system fail just a little bit so they finally learn they don't have to catch everything?
That's a powerful thought to end on.
Something to mull over. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep holding it down, but really, don't forget to take a break.